So good morning and welcome to this video. Today we're going to be looking at Mr Birling and a Mr Birling question. So the question that I've lined up is, how does Priestley portray the character of Mr Birling in the play of Inspector Calls? Now, what I'm going to do in this video is talk you through how I would make my plan, and I'll go through it really slowly. So in the actual exam or in the actual piece of writing, I'd only spend 2 or 3 minutes doing this, but I'm going to take you through nice and slowly, and I'll talk you through my thought process as well. What might be a good idea is, as I'm writing on mine, you get yourself a blank bit of paper or a document and you can be writing on yours. So tomorrow you'll be able to sit and you'll be able to write this essay as well. So let's get into it then. This here is an image I found of Mr Birling, and I think this is quite a good one, and no offence to that actor, but I think this is a good one that will line up the idea that he is heavy looking and rather pretentious. And that'd be a nice little quote that I might use in my introduction and my thesis statement, just to describe the stage directions that are given by Priestley for that portrayal of Mr Birling. And this heavy looking and rather pretentious, this sort of leads me to the idea that Priestley wanted to describe him as a bit of a fat cat. Someone that was interested in money, obviously had wealth, and had that kind of only care about myself and my own goals kind of mentality to him. Now, the question itself is asking us, how does Priestley portray? If I think about the word portray, that might just be a synonym for the word show, or perhaps describe or present. So what this question's really asking you to do is answer, how does Priestley show, describe, or create the character of Mr Birling? So I'm going to think of a couple of words that I think describe him the best. Also, I am trying to do this live, so I'm not doing this with notes. This is what I can remember from my head to give you that kind of idea of what it would be like if you were doing this in an actual exam question. One of the first things that pops into my mind, and I think one of the dominant ideas in the play, is that Mr Birling is a capitalist. He's a man that is interested in money, is interested in profit, he's interested in furthering his own ambition. And if I think of perhaps a quote that links to this idea of him being a capitalist, I might go for a time when Crofts and Birlings are working together for lower costs and higher prices. And this comes from Act 1, and it's when Birling is talking to Gerald, and it's how happy that he's going to be because, you know, this marriage will further merge the two families together and it will give him more of that wealth. Next, one of the ideas that I think Priestley really goes for, linking to this idea of capitalism, that Priestley was more of a socialist and he was a socialist writer, is the idea that he makes capitalists look foolish, and one of the ways that he does that is by having Birling making predictions that are wrong. The two most prevalent ones and the ones most often quoted would be when he talks about the war and when he talks about the Titanic as well. If I think of the quote linked to the Titanic, it's unsinkable, absolutely unsinkable. And when I think of the quote linked to the war, I might go for fiddlesticks. The Germans don't want war, nobody wants war. Both of these quotes contain that idea of a bit of dramatic irony, where the audience knows something that the character doesn't, and they're both important for showing how Mr Birling or the character of Mr Birling, always sees himself as being right, is very narrow-minded, and won't accept the views and the ideas of others. And if I was trying to be extremely clever and show off my knowledge of the wider play and perhaps writer's intention, I could link this to the lighting in the play. The stage direction gives that it should be pink and intimate. And I think this links quite nicely to the idea that the Birlings only see the world through rose-tinted glasses. They only see the world for what they want and how they want to see it. Okay, so that's two ideas. We've got the idea that he's presented as capitalist, that he's portrayed as being foolish. I might go for another around this idea of his arrogance. Now, he's extremely excited because he thinks he's going to be getting a knighthood. And I think, I'm not sure if knighthood is a quote. I might instead go for New Year's honours list. And this again is the idea that he does not want anything to go wrong. He's got such a strong opinion that he is going to be knighted for all the services that he has done for the country, when in fact, you know, we see him as being not a very nice man at all, given his reaction to Eva's death and the way he treats his wife and the way he treats the rest of his family. Another than what I go for is this idea of him being selfish. Ooh, apologies. This idea that he's quite selfish. The idea that he's only interested in his own furthering and his own abilities and what he cares about. One of the quotes that springs to my mind is, if you don't come down hard on these people, they'll soon be asking for the earth. And this backs up the idea that he really does not view the working classes as worthy or important in society. He treats them like drones almost, like they're not quite real or not important. So far we've got foolish, we've got arrogant, we've got selfish. Another I might go for, and this links more closely to his own family, is the fact that he's patronising. The idea that he's so provincial in his speech, the idea that he's incredibly rude to his wife, and he's rude to the inspector, and he's also rude to Sheila. Sheila, I'm going to go for that. So the two quotes that link to Sheila, I think, might be, he asks, "What's the matter with the child?" in Act 2. And later on, "Be quiet, Sheila." So despite her being a grown-up child that, you know, is engaged to Gerald, he still treats her as though she is a small child that he can just at any moment. Linking perhaps to his selfishness. Ooh, let's go for a little arrow here. Linking to this idea of perhaps his selfishness is maybe his lack of foresight. And when I talk about that, I mean he was unwilling to give workers more wages, again, which led to Eva being dismissed, her being the ringleader in the situation. But when the inspector threatens him, his immediate response is, "I'd give thousands." Yes, thousands. So straight away we see that sort of duality around his character, that he won't accept and he always wants to be in control. And this backs up that capitalist idea. I think I've got room for one more. I might go for one of his last lines in the play. I think I might go for maybe this idea of looping back around to him being foolish, or actually better than that, he doesn't change his opinion. By the end of the play, Sheila and Eric have both had that moment of metanoia, that change in thinking, but he has not. He's really happy when he thinks Gerald has worked it out, and he goes, "Ooh, what is it? We've been had." That's all. And he's so keen to dismiss the idea that he could possibly be held accountable for his actions. He'd much rather that the whole thing be a hoax. And then he points that kind of judgmental eye back at Eric and Sheila, calling them, look at them now, the famous younger generation, can't even take a joke. Okay, so that is my little mind map on Mr Birling. Hopefully you found that informative. Apologies that I'm not the best at creating something that looks lovely and wonderful and tidy. I'm sure many are much better at that than I. Hope you've enjoyed the video. Stay safe. Speak soon.